Now, one thing that you were talking about how this bill will force people by law to become insured. With the enrollment for medical schools being at all-time highs and more medical schools that are being built all over the country than ever before, wouldn't you say that everyone having to be insured by law would actually cause more people to go to the hospital, creating a more need for the high-paying medical jobs?
Well, one of the things you said is exactly what they've seen happen in Massachusetts when they forced people to buy insurance there and everybody to be covered. What they found is that the waits to get into doctors' offices are longer. There's actually an article in the Wall Street Journal today that you can get online. It's called The Failure of Romney Care, which is what they have in Massachusetts, and it talks about an average wait time now to see a doctor, if you can get in 44 days, if you call for an appointment to see a family physician. The emergency rooms are more crowded now in Massachusetts than they were before. So when the president talks about making sure everybody has coverage, that doesn't mean everybody has care. Yesterday there was a front page story about the fact that it's harder and harder for people on Medicaid to get to see a doctor because more doctors as well as patients are dropping out of the program because the hospital in Riverton couldn't stay open if all they got paid was at Medicaid or Medicare rates. There's not enough to let them pay the nurses and the light bills and the medicines and everything else. So it's when the president says, I want to help cover everybody and I'm going to give 15 million more people a Medicaid card, it doesn't mean that they're going to get any, that coverage actually provides care.
Well, now I could see that happening in maybe the first 4, maybe in the first decade. There being a hard time to get into the hospital because of the waiting lists and everything else. But being Americans, when there's a need, especially when there's a need for jobs, Americans are always there to help fill that void. So let's just say over the first decade, it's hard to get into the hospitals. Well, during that decade, wouldn't new hospitals be being made? And like I said, enrollment for medical schools are at all-time highs, and medical schools are actually being built all over the country just to fill that need. So wouldn't you say like in 10 years, maybe even further down the line, because of the amount of need and the problem that would create, that they would actually create some jobs as well, just to fill the need? Because, I mean, if there's too many people waiting in the waiting room, build another hospital. Fill it up with more doctors. Wouldn't that work out?
Well, if this worked like the way a regular economy would, then you probably would, Ryan. But when the government says, and for those patients who show up at that doctor's office or at that hospital, we're only going to pay enough money that's not even enough to keep the building open, to heat the place, to pay the salaries of the people that work there, nobody's going to build that hospital. And doctors are stopping seeing a number of these patients. And the other thing, and the people I know from Fremont County, and I took care of a lot of them in Casper, coming in, Life Flight Helicopter and others, they don't want, the people in Wyoming aren't going to want to hear what we're going to put up with for the first decade, for the first 10 years of this, until things maybe smooth out. I don't think they will smooth out because the payment to hospitals and doctors, and it's not just hospitals and doctors. We're talking about nursing homes, talking about home health agencies, talking about hospice for people at the terminal parts of their life. All of those are dramatically cut in this bill. So I think it's actually going to be not as good 10 years from now than it is now, and people aren't going to do additional research into new medical techniques and new medications, new drugs, new artificial hips, which is what I did for a living.
And see,
pacemakers, all those sorts of things. When all of a sudden the government says, "No, we're not going to pay you much for it."
There's a part of me that has to disagree, and I'm just going to leave it at that, just because the need in the doctor area right now is for general practitioners, because all the doctors that are out there are going into those specialized medicines. And I just think that with the need, that it would create more jobs. But we'll move on. I do got this one question for you. Congress right now, I saw last night on Fox News, has a 17% approval rate. A lot of people will say that this is because of this healthcare issue. Something that I have felt myself, and I want to know what you think about this. I am starting to get to the point, because I've followed politics for a long time. I actually love it. I think it's an awesome thing to watch. It's better than reality television. But I'm starting to get the feeling that our congressmen that we are voting in seem to worry more about getting reelected and will actually play it safe and then say, oh, well, we tried to get this done, but these people blocked it, than actually accomplishing something that isn't sending us to war and tax cuts. What would you say to that?
I come home every weekend to Wyoming. This past weekend I was in Casper, Buffalo, Lusk, and Wheatland, listening to people, hearing what they have to say. Mike Enzi was home this weekend. Cynthia Lummis was home. We get home to Wyoming just about every weekend, and we say we don't always get to our own homes, but we get home to Wyoming. And that's how we stay in touch with people, listening to what people have to say. We want to hear what they have to say. We have these telephone town hall meetings. We have town meetings in person. We continue to listen to people of Wyoming. My phone number is still listed in the phone book in Casper. People can get to us in ways that is so beautiful about Wyoming. People senators from California, New York, or Texas don't have that. So I'm not surprised that Congress's ratings are so low. But I continue to get home every weekend. I'll be home again on Friday, traveling around the state, visiting with folks and listening to what they have to say. And that's why you never become one of them in Washington, and you always remain Wyoming.